Welcome to the Royal Geographical Society with the Institute of British Geographers. My name is Alistair MacLeod and I'm the Head of Collections here at the Society. And it's our great pleasure to have entered into a partnership agreement with Silversea Expedition Cruises to provide enrichment resources for guests on board ship and also here at the Society in South Kensington. The Royal Geographical Society is the UK's learned society for the discipline of geography. It has huge international reach and its contemporary work is essential in terms of education, both at school and higher education level. But we're very proud of the legacy that we have inherited from some of the key expeditions and figures associated with the history of exploration and travel. These are represented within the 2 million plus items that we have here, probably the world's most unrivaled collection relating to the subject. So the resources that we provide for you as guests on board a Silversea cruise will enable you at individual waypoints and itinerary points to think about those earlier expeditions, to see some of the early mapping and photographs, and to read the accounts of some of the earliest explorers, from Russia's Far East to the Kimberleys in Australia, and from the Pacific Ocean and its islands through to the coastlines of the British Isles. You'll be surprised and I hope delighted by the material that we provide. Every resource is created as a bespoke resource for Silversea, and the research which is done in order to create the resources is carried out by a team of 8 specialists working within the Society's foil reading room. In addition to the onboard resources, we're delighted to welcome Silversea guests to private views here at the Society, but also to see items from our collections taken overseas to Silversea locations. And we very much hope that you will meet members of my team at these events where we can share with you some of the extraordinary objects that we have, which have an iconic status in the history of geography. When the Society provides private views for Silversea guests, we're often asked as members of staff, which are our favourite items? And so I'd just like to tell you a little bit about some of the items which I consider to be some of the most important in our collections. One of the most important and probably my most favourite of items is Darwin's box sextant. This is the sextant that was carried by Charles Darwin as a young 24-year-old Cambridge graduate on the voyage of the Beagle, the iconic and critically important expedition which would lead to his decipherment of the evolutionary theory that became the origin of the species. And he would have used it during his travels through the Galapagos Islands, one of the key destinations for Silversea and one for which we've provided in-depth resources. The Antarctic collections at the Society are also one of the finest and most important internationally. And one of my favourite items in that collection is possibly one of the smallest that we hold. This is the eyepiece from the Norwegian explorer Roald Amundsen's sextant, which he left at the South Pole with a letter to King Haakon of Norway, having reached the pole ahead of the British explorer Captain Scott. The story of Scott and Amundsen is well known, but little is known or understood about the enormous scientific legacy left by Captain Scott. The data which he and his men collected before their tragic end was brought back to Britain and became the foundation of modern understanding of Antarctica, its geography, its geology, its biology and meteorology. And that little eyepiece is something which gives an almost talismanic sense of these men, the first in one of the most inhospitable climates in the world. And we very often compare their achievement to that of the early astronauts on the first NASA program into space. They were travelling into the unknown. They were perhaps less well equipped than they should have been. They had no communication methods to support them in their work. So we hope that when you see that item, it will open up vistas of those enormously important historical expeditions and the effort and passion which was put into them, whether by Norwegians, by the British or by others. We're delighted and proud to be the host to one of the finest collections relating to the exploration of Africa by British explorers from the 19th century. And possibly preeminent amongst those, the work of Dr. David Livingstone, the Scottish missionary explorer. The Society recognised his enormous achievement and his capability as a map maker and sent him on 3 successive funded expeditions to map the heart of Africa. The Livingstone collection is probably best represented by two sets of items. One, a wonderfully evocative view of the Victoria Falls, sketched by Livingstone as the first European to see the water cascading over the falls. And the second, which is purely by chance, the incredible cap worn by David Livingstone and the solar topee or pith helmet worn by Henry Morton Stanley on the day in 1881 when Stanley finally found Livingstone at Ujiji and uttered the immortal words, "Dr. Livingstone, I presume." Again, these are talismanic objects which tell you a little bit about the stories that go broadly into our understanding of Africa and how it looked more or less before the interior was mapped and charted for European eyes. We very much hope to welcome you here to our headquarters in South Kensington, but during your expeditionary voyage with Silversea Expedition Cruises, we hope that you will enjoy and be entertained by the Silversea enrichment resources we have created, based on the experiences of earlier men and women as expedition leaders and travellers through the last 500 years, and that you too will be able to share in the passion of their journeys and also have some of the intrepid, independent travel experiences which they themselves experienced. We warmly welcome you to the Society.